I can start it off here. So my name is Peter Tadrous. I started at St. John's in 2016, working on my bachelor's in computer science. And while studying at St. John's, a 5-year program was started for computer science and data science. So I stayed a 5th year to finish my master's in data science, which I finished last year in 2021. I worked closely with Professor Joan DeBello and Professor Christina Schweikert. They were very critical to my education, and I actually um, got my current job from one of the career fairs at St. John's. So I met uh, one of the recruiters from the NPD Group, which is a market research firm in retail market research, and I started as a summer associate there. They have a 10-week program where you can kind of meet many people across the company and work on interesting challenge projects. And I stayed on with the team until I graduated, and then I transitioned full time. And just earlier this year, I switched over to their machine learning team in research and development.
I could go next. So, hi, my name is Roshni Shukla. I graduated from St. John's back in December, so not too long ago. And I work at Deloitte as a cyber analyst, especially in like the infrastructure and cloud space. So really happy to be here. I was vice president of ACM. Hopefully some of you guys remember me, but so that was like a really fun time and definitely also pretty critical to kind of working at Deloitte and being able to like have sort of a body of work and that I did and that I was really proud of. So really happy to see you guys and hope St. John's is doing well.
Hey everyone, I'm Nick Doglio. I graduated from St. John's in 2017. I'm actually based still in Queens in Woodside. I just kind of recently started a new role at Zillow as a senior software engineer, but before that, I worked at Nextdoor, Vimeo, and Verizon. All of that was kind of focused on Android, so that's kind of like my area of expertise.
Hey y'all. My name is Lance. I graduated class 2019 in major computer science, minor cybersecurity. Out of college, I joined Liberty Mutual Insurance for 2 years as a software engineer through their Tech Start program, like a new hire graduate program to learn engineering. And recently, this year, I joined Meta Platforms as a server engineer. So I'm working on Instagram and I work on things like Instagram network latency. So it's me now.
All right, awesome. Thank you guys all for introducing yourself, and also thank you just for coming today for this alumni panel. We're glad to get some of our previous students back and be able to talk to our current students. So with that being that the common thread between everybody here is St. John's, we want to know, this is the first question on my behalf, is what was your biggest takeaway from St. John's and how does it fit into your daily role now?
I could go. I think a big thing that I learned was taking initiative, going to those career fairs, actually talking with the recruiters, doing a little bit of non-creepy research beforehand, so I could talk to the recruiters about something they know. So I think just having that initiative and being able to communicate is something that I carry over to Deloitte. It's a pretty networking heavy culture here. So I think that was a big thing. And everyone at St. John's was always like pretty easy to talk to as well, especially at those club meetings. So I think bringing that full circle was pretty important for me.
I would say for me, something that I learned with my time at St. John's was that it's not enough to just work on the projects assigned in your courses. You got to find something that really interests you, something you're really passionate about, and find a way to work on a project outside of school and really build up your skills through that.
For me, you're not always going to be the best dealt the best hand in school. And in life, it's kind of the same way, but you are expected to figure it out over time, and no one blames you for that. So for me, the biggest thing I learned is that you might not have the best support system, but if you really try your hardest, like things kind of do work out in the long term. So as long as you try your best in all your classes, in your job, like people will be appreciative of the work that you do.
And I guess for me, I think a big thing was time management. I think transitioning from high school to college, like you have a lot more free time. It's very different. I think it's also similar as a software engineer where I really only have like 1 or 2 meetings a day that are very short that I have to attend. And after that, I'm kind of free to get my work done whenever I want, but I still have to meet deadlines. So kind of like working on that to make sure I spend the right amount of time on work and not, get fall behind or work too much.
All right, thank you very much for those answers. Actually, I wanted to piggyback off of something that Peter mentioned, and that's projects going outside of the classroom. So another question that I had myself was, projects are a massive part of working in tech. So I would say, what is one of your favorite personal projects, but also what are one of your favorite work projects, whether it be with your current company or a company that you were with before?
I think I'll take this one and I'll answer both together. So recently I was working on, this is more data science than computer science. Recently I was working on a NLP, natural language processing project at work, and I was using some deep neural network architectures, um, specifically bidirectional LSTMs, and it was my first time working on that. I did a lot of self-learning online. Um, but after that, I went on Kaggle to look at some of the current competitions, and I found one that I could actually leverage the knowledge that I just recently learned. So I started working on this project of scoring uh, the writing assignments of English as a second language students on various factors, just feeding the raw text through a network and outputting 6 scores for the grammar, vocabulary, and so forth. And it was really fun to work on that and see it tie together with something I recently learned at work.
I can go for this as well. For like a side project that I started on in school was a Android app called Awe Gallery. It's not in the Play Store anymore, but it was essentially like an Instagram where it only had cute animal photos. So that was actually critical to me getting my first job. I don't think I would have gotten my first job had I not had that on my resume. And so then we talked about a ton in the interview process. And in terms of like projects professionally that I worked on a lot, that I'm really proud of. At Nextdoor, I led the dark mode project on Android. So if you're using dark mode in Nextdoor app on Android, that was me and my team really like spending 6 months like making sure everything was perfect, and that was something that was really awesome.
I don't think I have anything as good as cute animal Instagram, but I was really proud of like a reverse engineering lab that I did for ACM, just because it was like my last year. I was like, I just learned it. There were people that knew more than me about it in the audience. It was just like fun because you had that exchange. So that was a really good moment for me. Um, so I'm like relatively new to the working space. So I've been not on many projects yet, just the one that I'm on now. But I remember during an internship I had at another firm, there was something that my boss was like, "Nah, that's not really a security flaw in that code. That's nothing." But I like made a proof of concept, pitched it, and he was like, "Oh, it actually kind of was." So that was like a highlight because it's just one of those things where like you don't have to do it, but because you did it, it's just like you get that satisfaction. So that was nice.
For me, personal project, I made like a small image recognition neural network back somewhere in my senior year. It was a lot of fun. Didn't really have much information in the AI space, so it was pretty interesting to learn and do. And then for work, I recognized some neglected code that we had on the IG server for tagging low bandwidth videos, so that way, or video quality for the video compression and encodings, and was able to like I don't want to get too much into the nitty-gritty about the details behind it, but essentially like after fixing some things up, like I was able to like increase like video quality in like low bandwidth countries like India and like some parts of Africa for like by like 16% over the course of a couple months. So that's pretty cool.
Okay, thank you very much for all those answers. For the next question, actually, we're gonna jump to somebody that's in the audience. So, Antonios, if you don't mind, unmuting your mic, you can put on your camera if you want, and asking the question that you submitted through the Google form.
Yeah, certainly. Can you hear me?
Yes, we could hear you.
So, like, when it comes to the knowledge required for your specific position, how much of it is thanks to your college education at St. John's? How much is it is thanks to outside learning resources? And how much of it is just your job training? Like, how much, in terms of your knowledge, was required prior to your position?
I can start first because I have a very unique experience at Meta. Um, so I'd say that for my position, like coding at a bare minimum, you should know and have down pat, and you should have most of your system design and software design skills ready before you leave college. But for on the job skills, like the ways, like we do data collection, logging, like latency testing, A/B testing, all sorts of like these crazy things and like privacy review and like we're heavily FCC regulated, so we have to go through FCC regulation review and things like that. And all those things, we have spent the entire first month of our job just doing a boot camp and training for other people, just how we do things at the company. So you do spend a lot of time on the job picking things up, and our expectation at our company is that you're not going to be a full-fledged producing value engineer for the first 6 months. Like you're not going to have a performance review for the first 6 months. You're not going to get a rating. You're just going to be like learning and ramping up and just trying to get as much good code out as possible. Um, it's a lot of fun. It seems intimidating, but I would say for you guys that are just in school, just really be really good at software design, understand how big like system design at a high level at most companies, how these big companies are like architecting their systems. But then when you get to your job, just try to take it one day at a time.
Yeah, to Lance's point, for my first job out of school, like there was a lot of, on the job training. They don't really expect you to know like a ton with your first job out of school. They're like, you should know algorithms, you should be comfortable with like data structures in whatever language that you're working in, you should be comfortable with that. But like they're going to help you through tooling, they're going to help you with like, domain specific stuff. There's going to be a lot of help there. But I also think there was things for me at least that I had to learn like outside of St. John. Like I think Peter mentioned it earlier with side projects, like for learning, there's a lot of like weird things that go into like making an Android app. Like they're not going to teach you that in class. You have to learn that on your own to kind of prepare you for that. So like to apply that to whatever domain that you're focused in.
I would say for me, I actually don't feel like I had a super strong background in coding in undergrad. I think the reason for that was a lot of my courses mainly focused on Java, but not necessarily building full stack projects. Um, and so in my first internship, I actually worked closely with another intern who uh, was volunteering in her community teaching Python to high schoolers. So working closely with her, I feel like that summer my Python skills were really built up. And now uh, learning new things at work, I have a good team of fellow data scientists that I can reach out to when I need help. But then there's also a fair bit of self-learning along the way. So I've recently started picking up some O'Reilly textbooks that I keep sitting on my desk. And it's difficult to find good textbooks, but once you find the right one, it's good to keep it close by so you can always have ground truth source of information to reference.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of all three. It's college, it's on the job learning, and then it's looking the good old fashioned looking stuff up, which I find is like the vast majority of my job. So, and not like my job is to look stuff up, but like to get the answers for my job. You guys know what I mean. I think a big thing, which I kind of learned during my internship, and I'm so happy I learned it there and not the job, is being able to ask for help and like letting your pride kind of go down, accept that, okay, I looked up as much as I can. I did as much as I could. Okay, I need to ask for help now. It's like a big thing. When you're doing your homework, you could kind of just, take a long time to get things done. But sometimes in a work environment, there is expectations that you have these deadlines. So being able to balance self-learning with asking for help is really important. I also find that a really good way to ask for help is to like share some of what you learned as like a potential solution. So I've like gone to my manager and been like, okay, I'm thinking this could be a way to go, but ultimately I still need help. What do you think? And just like showing that you did a little bit of it is really good. So I know that was very specific, but just as like an approach as you're learning, I found that works well.
Once again, thank you for all those answers when coming to college education, outside learning, and job training. One of the biggest things, at least in the cyber world, I know for certain is certifications. And I know there are also certifications possible for computer programming and computer science. So the question that we have prepared right here focuses on the cybersecurity majors. And I know Roshni is the only cybersecurity major on the panel right now. But if anybody from the computer science field also wants to talk about towards this question, but what certifications would you recommend for cybersecurity and computer science, and what would it be like preparing for those certifications or taking the exam, and are they helpful in your current job role?
Sure. So trying to run back those questions. Okay. So first of all, I think there's the kind of hard line would probably be security plus. People might disagree with me on that, but I think it really is, first of all, it ties in very well with the curriculum at St. John's, at least when I was there. I can't imagine a year made that much of a difference. So it really is reflective of what you have learned, and it's a really good start that basically everybody respects in different industries. So that I'm kind of not very compromising on. But for other certifications, it kind of depends how you learn. Like for me, it was very beneficial to get a cloud certification. I got in the Azure, just a very random one, security operations analyst or something like that, because it forced me to like get into cloud at a very structured level. That doesn't work for everybody. Other people might just want to dive in, like create an Azure account and just play around with it, make an app or something like that. So it really just depends on the way you learn. So there's not like a hard answer on that. It's also nice to get breadth rather than depth, especially if you don't really know what area of cyber or computer science you want to be in. Sometimes it's nice to like dip your toe in and get like a baby Azure certification or like the AWS cloud practitioner, something like that. So it's not an overly difficult exam, but you get to dip your toe in. I hope that answered that person's question for the most part.
Yeah, I'm sure that it did. And again, I know that was structured more towards cybersecurity majors, but if Lance, Nicholas, or Peter, you guys want to touch on that before we move to the next questions, be my guest.
Yeah, absolutely. So at least I'm only going to speak to Android because that's kind of like the area I know. There are like certificates that exist for Android, but like from what from when I've talked to people interviewing and like in in my experience, they aren't highly valued. Like if you were interviewing for an Android job, I would much rather see like a side project. Like if you have an app on GitHub or the Google Play Store, I would much rather see that than some like certificate like course that took you like walked you through that process. But having the initiative yourself to put something else out there is like far more attractive to me.
All right, so with that, I'll share Lance and Peter, you guys have your thoughts on it, but we could move on to the next question. This one is actually directed for Roshni as well. So this is coming from Tuda. If you don't mind unmuting your mic. I'm sorry there. Yeah, unmuting your mic and asking the question.
Yeah, hey, what's up, everyone? My name's Tuda, senior here at St. John's, studying computer science with a minor in math. Before I have a couple questions actually, so get used to me asking a bunch of questions. But I just wanted to say, like, congrats for being such successful people. I think it's super inspiring. We have some like huge names here, huge job titles, so it's really inspiring and motivating. So thank you guys for hopping on. And Roshni, so we spoke previously. I was fortunate enough to get a summer internship at Deloitte, and being that it's yeah, and it was a really awesome experience, and was lucky enough to get a full-time offer. Being that it's not necessarily a strict tech company, but you do have a very technical role, what is that crossover like? Do you think that you're able to utilize your technical abilities to your full capacity? Are there appropriate resources for you? And just like overall, what is it like having a pretty technical role in a non-technical company?
I think other panelists could also contribute to this too, as well. So feel free, anybody else. But in my opinion, it's interesting because it's a combination. What you get when you get a consulting company is a combination of technical and non-technical, right? Because by the end of the day, you're servicing clients and you're helping them with a business problem. So you kind of get the best of both worlds if you're into that sort of thing. I find that my role is very technical, but that's because I'm infrastructure, cloud, engineering. Like that's just where I ended up. I know other people, they're more on the strategy side. So even from the beginning, they're just living in PowerPoints. So it's kind of a hard question to answer very narrowly, but I'd say just my experiences being technical, it's been very cool because you're surrounded by really smart people. You're kind of around, in college, you're kind of around the same people, but when you're out there in the workforce, you get to see like just everyone else and learn from everyone else too. So that has been really exciting. At the same time, sometimes I like really try to look out for events that are specifically tailored to like the technical folks, just to also be around people that are a little bit more similar to you, especially if you're in a very big company. It's kind of valuable to narrow your networking a little bit more. But I'm not sure if that fully answered your question. Is if you want to tailor it a little bit more, but
Yeah, no, that was great. Definitely very important to be good at networking in a big four firm. So I definitely get that. I do have another question, if you don't mind, just for me to say it now. For this is kind of more geared towards the software engineers here. I'm currently a technical project manager intern at SAP. So I had a couple like technical rounds. It was nothing too crazy, but I have applied previously to some software engineering positions, and they have some very intense technical interviews. So I'd love to know kind of how you guys have prepared for that, and if you can shed some advice or insight on that.
Yeah, I go. Yeah, interviews are long and annoying. I think it's kind of part of the process of just working in tech. You know, like at least for me, most of my kind of like the final round for interviews and most of my companies that I've interviewed for have been like 4 or 5 hour days of like nonstop going through like system design, algorithms, kind of domain knowledge, stuff like that. So it's a lot. A big thing for me is like, you know, having a goal set in mind, like, you know, like say I'm going to prep for a month or two and like having some sort of schedule down where like, you know, like today I'm going to work on system design. Today I'm going to work on like domain knowledge around, you know, I'm Android developer, play around with some Android stuff, or I'm gonna work on some algorithm stuff or some like behavioral questions I want to practice. So like having some like set schedule where you can like adhere to while you start preparing helped me a lot when I was kind of like getting ready to gear up to interview for roles.
I lead code every day. Every single day I do a lead code problem. I've done a lot of lead code. I've done a lot of system design prep. I've put in like maybe equivalent or more hours than I did in school of it just interview prep. I think it's just a skill that's good to have. A lead code a day keeps unemployment away, is what they say now. Um, but there's a couple books that really helped me get there. Elements of Programming Interviews and Python is my book of choice for you to get studied. I think Cracking the Coding Interview is outdated these days. I think it's a bad book. I don't think it's technical enough or deep enough. I think Elements of Programming is good. I do a list called Sean Prasad, I believe it's his name. It's based off the Blind 75 interview prep list. Very good, very complete. Covers most major algorithm topics you'll have during most tech interviews. For you guys that are recently graduating, I wouldn't really worry more about system design. That's more of like an SE2, SE3 kind of thing. So I would kind of stay away from that for now, but have a good understanding of it just for your own knowledge, so that way you're kind of prepared when you jump into the job and know what's going on. But yeah, it's just kind of time in. Eventually, the more you lead code, the easier it's going to get, and it just takes time to figure out. It's a completely different skill than what you're going to be doing on the job anyway, but it's kind of just one of those things that's kind of come with the territory of tech. And yeah, no, I know what it's like. It's stressful, it's overwhelming. I did like my Google rounds when I was going through them, it was like an 8-hour day at the end for the final round. My meta ones now were like 6 hours. It's a lot, and I understand. So, and it can be a little overwhelming. So just take it day by day. Try to do the daily problem on lead code every day, but you'll get there.
Yeah, that's really helpful. That was my reminder to actually start leak coding consistently. So thank you for that. And I guess just for my final question for now, at least, it's kind of a downer, but I think it is pretty important. Unfortunately, in technology, there have been a lot of layoffs, hiring freezes, stuff like that. It's a pretty scary time. Every time I log on to LinkedIn, I close it because I don't want to see it. And with a bunch of us graduating out in May of 2023 or even December of this year, do you have any advice for new grads on how they can navigate this kind of space? Should we stick with the technology route and stick with very technical roles, or should we perhaps diversify our minds and maybe stick to something like doing a technical role at a non-tech company or something along those lines?
I'd say especially for the first job to be open to non-tech companies, just to get that experience on your resume. Because like the more experience you have, the easier it's going to be to get whatever role you want. Because the first role is always the hardest to get. Like once you're in, and you can the more experience you get, you're going to have recruiters in your inbox every week nagging you about roles. So like the first job, yeah, be open, like try different things. In terms of like like persevering, I think Roshni mentioned like initiative, like be like persistent with recruiters, be a persistent, like once you apply for a job, reach out to a recruiter, reach out to someone at the company in hiring to make sure like they know your name and like can put like a name to a face and remember you, like make it clear that you want this role and just kind of keep pushing from there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, to add to that, the first job really is the most important. My first role at MPD was actually in operations, working with all non-tech people, just automating some things in Python. And MPD's not really a tech company. We're kind of moving closer to that. But when you work at a non-tech company, you also have the opportunity to kind of do some thought leadership as well in what direction to take things with tech. Like I've started quite a few initiatives on my previous team and on my current team in documenting code, better code practices, um, things that are kind of taken for granted at a larger tech company, but you learn a lot in kind of helping others get there as well.
I don't have anything to add for the most part. I think everyone else covered it. But what I will say is it's not a complete downer. My aunt is actually a tech recruiter, and she said tech jobs are doing really well despite the recession. So I know maybe for some cases, maybe specifically what you're looking for might not be there right now. But just want to give a little pop of hope that there are other perspectives out there, and maybe things aren't so bad.
I'll definitely echo what Nicholas said. Definitely be interested in tech positions at non-tech companies. There's a lot of opportunities there that are really nice for your resume, and the first job is always the hardest. I think that for those of you that are going to be looking for the job, the way I did it is step one is making sure your resume is good, because if you're not getting callbacks, that means something's wrong. Step two is if you're getting interviews, make sure that your interview's going well, and then just analyze. So it's just check your resume, make sure it's good, make sure you're getting those callbacks because your resume is good. And then step two is then making sure you have those interview skills ready. But good luck because it's kind of a bloodbath out there now. I dodged the layoffs yesterday.
Yeah, I'm glad you did. And thank you guys for the insight, and thank you, Roshni, for the beacon of light that I think I needed. For now, those are all my questions, but I'm sure you'll hear my voice in a couple minutes again. So thank you.
One more thing I wanted to add too, please get your resume reviewed through St. John's, because I know some people knock oh, I don't need the career person, whatever, I could do it myself, or oh, they don't know anything about tech. I've seen so many people, like so many of my peers' resumes in St. John's, and I was just like, oh my gosh, no wonder you're not getting calls. Like, why? Like, why? So please, like, it's the basic stuff. Start with the basic stuff. Don't start cold calling recruiter. Get your resume in order. Start the basic stuff. Then you can kind of level up from there. And also, don't be afraid, by the way, to cold message recruiters. Worst comes to worst, they'll ignore you. Like, what? Trust me, like I have social anxiety sometimes. I get it, but this business does, like every business, reward a little bit of aggressiveness. Nothing crazy, but definitely work different angles to get your job.
All right. Thank you, guys.
I think from there, we wanted to transition to a follow-up question that Antonios had. So Antonios, if you don't mind unmuting your mic and, asking that follow-up question that you had on this topic.
Yeah, so this came from a specific mindset, but I'll try to sort of generalize it. The question is going off of that thing that you guys stated that maybe is it best to go for a technical role at a non-technical company. I don't know how to generalize this question, but essentially, most of the positions that I am applying for, due to many circumstances, are that in technology consulting. However, it is possible that I may want to eventually switch to SWE, to software engineering. Do you think that that's possible? Like, if you just have your foot in the door in other companies and you're doing leak code and stuff like that on the side, or is it a problem if you don't have like software engineering internship experience? I hope that was a well-phrased question.
That's a good question. Thank you for asking that. And I think as long as you're able to show that you have the drive to learn on the job and you are working on your skills, whether it's a personal project or well, hopefully it's a personal project, you shouldn't let the fact that your current role is not the same as your next role cloud your judgment in whether or not you can get that. Like I said, I started at NPD in operations, and my very next role was a machine learning engineer. And that's because I was working on machine learning and projects while working on my data science master's, but I was only working automating things. I think I muted myself, but yeah, I was only working in Python automating things and then went straight to machine learning engineering because of the projects I was working on.
One thing I'll add to that super quick, it's not specific to software engineering, but lateral movement is like a really big thing. Companies already vetted you. They know you're legit. They know you're a good worker. Sometimes they don't care that much if you just take on a different role within the company. They'd much rather have that than the random person that they don't know applying for the job. So the number one goal, of course, should be to get the role that you want to get. Don't just jump on the first maybe opportunity, but at the same time, don't be overly concerned if it's not exactly what you want.
So I don't know if Lance or Nicholas wanted to touch on that topic before we move on. Okay, so the next question that we have here is again talking about the companies. How would you all describe your company culture, and how important is it for you to work in a company that promotes a healthy work-life balance and meets your professional goals at the end of the day?
I can go first. So I work at Meta, also like AKA Facebook, AKA family of apps, like Reality Labs, like we made legs on VR, whatever we want to call it. And day-to-day life, the culture, it's very open and collaborative. You can set up one-on-ones with literally anyone up the chain to like 3 or 4 levels ahead of you and meet with them and just talk about what they're doing and how you're doing. That said, though, the projects you're doing are very individual on a day-to-day basis. You're kind of your own biggest driver of project completion and making impact for yourself across the company. You got to find your projects yourself. You have to work on them yourself. You have to pitch them yourself. It's a lot of solo effort. But there is, because we work in a mono repo, which is just a big code base, just one singular code base, you do have to collaborate with a lot of individuals. So there's a lot of openness there. And I think it's like probably the greatest place I've ever worked. I absolutely love it. Everyone I work with is incredibly intelligent, incredibly smart, incredibly helpful. Everyone's there to help each other and create impact with each other because all the collaboration looks good at your yearly performance review. So why wouldn't anyone want to help each other? The work-life balance is great. I can work whatever hours I want. There's free food in the office. It's great. I get like some cash to from my health and personal training. It's the Fang lifestyle is a lot of fun. It's very intense and it's really good. I hope all of you might want to who want to take a taste of it get there one day. But yeah, I think that just as cliche as it sounds, just the people and the collaboration on a day-to-day basis make it incredible. And I think that finding a company with that culture that works with you is probably really important in your career. So if you're not happy at your jobs, the grass could be greener on the other side.
I basically
Kind of like-
have. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Mine is super short because mine is almost exactly the same experience as Lance. I think it's very valuable when it's not super hierarchical. And surprisingly, I mean, at a company as big as Deloitte, like you can literally still just talk to anybody, like just anybody, which is really amazing. So I would keep that in mind, that if there's a lot of rigidity, it's going to be, maybe that might not work for you. So that's been great. And kind of like we've been sort of alluding to before, work-life balance is kind of something you create, in the sense that things are very flexible right now because things are hybrid, things are virtual. So it's about creating that for yourself, while still getting your work done.
Yeah, yeah, work-life balance is key. I think if you work in like a good company, it's just incredible. Like kind of like Lance mentioned, like a fan company. I would say even just like a lot of tech companies in general, like working at Zillow and previously at Nextdoor, not like FANG major tech companies you think of, but like I work the hours I want to work. I have very few meetings, very collaborative. I get to work on really cool projects that I enjoy, excellent benefits, stuff like that. So like if you're working on a tech company, the chances are you're gonna have really good work-life balance, really good benefits, and like hopefully working on some really fun projects.
I don't have much more to add to all these great answers, but I will say a very key part, and Nicholas mentioned this before, a very key part to work-life balance is time management. Making sure that you are able to get out of the habits you might have gotten into in school and focus on getting your work done efficiently.
One thing I want to add,
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
One thing I want to add super quick is right now is a really excellent time for you to learn more about yourself. When do you work the best in your day? Like, do you need music or just does like the lyrics distract you? Now is the time for you to like figure your stuff out. It's very nice when you know what works for you. Like I found out the hard way that like working on the weekends is just never going to work. Like I'd rather work later on a weekday because if I start working on the weekend, my mind is just shot. So it's start learning about yourself now and that'll help you as well. Otherwise it's just trial by error, which to an extent it's going to be anyway.
Yeah, so I had another question kind of piggybacking off what you all said. This is kind of geared towards the engineers as well. What percent of your day is spent coding versus being in meetings? Obviously, I am an intern, so I don't work on as cool of projects as you guys do, but a lot of my day is actually spent in meetings. So I'd love to know kind of what your guys' schedule looks like.
Yeah, I can speak to my current role and my last role, but most of it is coding. Very few meetings. I have a 30-minute stand-up every day, which is like everyone on the team comes together, kind of you give updates on what you did yesterday and today, and then you go off and do your thing. Outside of that, there's a few like weekly meetings for all the Android devs of the company, or like other team meetings just for like camaraderie, or like if like you have a project going on, there might be a meeting to sync on that with other stakeholders. But most of my day is kind of solo coding or like talking with someone, like pair programming with someone else. Very like few, like long meetings.
Yeah, for me, I spend about 5 hours a week in meetings from a 40-hour work week. Most of those meetings are one-on-ones and project syncs or just weekly team syncs. A lot of the meetings that I have are like ad hoc and can be canceled and rescheduled at all times. We have a no meeting policy on Wednesdays, so Wednesdays are just entire focus days. Our calendars are like time balanced to maximize like as amount of coding hours as you can. So like Tuesdays and Thursdays are like I have like 2.5 meetings in the morning and that's it. So like my afternoons are free. I would say for meetings, I think that the most important thing, even if you have them, is to make sure they're productive and that you're not wasting time. So setting agendas during them and like making sure everyone has the information they need and they know why you're having the meeting. And then making sure that you're not like breaking your focus time because that deep coding focus that you're just banging out code is probably the most valuable time you're going to be having at work.
Yeah, I know what I've seen so far is like people that are more entry level have less meetings than people that are more, I guess, higher up. So I usually get a really good amount of time in my day to actually get my work done. Sometimes I have actually the opposite problem where I really would like a meeting so that I could check in with my manager and make sure I'm on the right track. So if you find yourself on the other end of the spectrum at any point, communication is key because they can't read your mind. They don't know if it's a couple days from the deadline and you're still really rushing. So sometimes it actually helps to schedule ad hoc meetings as well, as long as they have a purpose.
Yeah, I gotta love the stand-ups, right? Said no one ever. So thank you guys.
But like I said, those stand-ups, they're good because they communicate where you're at. Oh, come on, people disagree with me. I mean,
I would agree. I think I've been at places where stand-ups have been really unproductive, and I think stand-ups are supposed to be like 15, 30 minutes max. I've been at places where they're like an hour long, and it's like very frustrating and awful. But like if they're done correctly, it's good to know what everyone else is doing and like to be able to like raise a concern if you need help. So I do think there's a lot of value there.
Lance is just smiling.
Well, my company's really different. Like all our projects are solo, so there's like no point for a stand-up. That's why we sync once a week. And honestly, that 15 minutes you get back, it's like it's nice. It's I like it a lot. Like those 15 minutes mean the world to me.
Actually, Lance, since you're kind of in a special situation where your projects are very solo, do you have like some sort of project manager that you report to, or product manager, whatever term, every so often, or like how does that structure work out for you?
Yeah, so the way I propose the way it works is that it's a bit complex. So there is a team, like my manager kind of approves projects as like I pretty much say like this is my tech spec, this is what I want to do to like move this metric that will make us more money. And then he kind of just puts a stamp on it. If it's he wants to approve it, and that project spec will have like milestones and timelines. So I can say like this project will take me X amount of weeks. This section, setting up, syncing with this team will take 1 week. Coding will take 2 weeks. Testing will take another two, and then I'll leave myself like a 2 week gap to like come around and iterate on it. So a lot of the times during those weekly syncs about those projects that I have, like every like Friday, we have like a 30-minute sync about where our projects are at. Um, I essentially will give a project update about what milestones are on. And a big thing at Meta is we have like an internal Facebook called Workplace. And essentially, like you're very much encouraged to like just consistently post in your groups about like where you are, what you've done this week, what your status are, to like boost signal for yourself. So that's our like major communication hub is kind of like through this one meeting and through like our essentially internal Facebook groups. So that's how we kind of keep projects on track. And then like obviously you can schedule stuff ad hoc when I need help, like I can message like an Android engineer to like bring them in on like how like the client works for like my server work. So it's a lot of syncing, it's a lot of like gathering alignment and just like getting project approvals and stuff. So it's a lot of administrative work is what I'd say. Make sense?
Yeah, yeah, it does. That was very insightful. So thank you.
Yeah,
And
thanks.
also another question that's popped up. I guess maybe a bit of a weird question, maybe aimed more towards Nicholas, but what do you think differentiates a good engineer from a great engineer? And how can someone, for example, that's going to be graduating soon, how can we kind of build those skill sets that make a great engineer?
I think one thing I like for is I think Roshni hit before about like knowing when to ask for help. I think very early on you can be like, like you're a junior on the team, you really want to prove yourself, and like you'll tunnel vision through like a day long debugging session, and you could have saved so much time by just going to like someone with more seniority sooner. So like, knowing when to ask for help is huge. I think being able to articulate and ask good questions is also really important. And, I think debugging and like knowing how to debug like whatever domain you're working on is also tremendous. Cause like I didn't know how to use like the debugger in Android Studio when I first started out. And I was kind of like print line all my kind of debugging things. And like, that's not efficient use of your time. And once you like know how to debug something, you're gonna be able to solve problems a lot faster and move a lot faster.
All right, thank you. That's all on my end for now, at least. Thanks.
I could chime in for that. I'm basically in an engineer role, so that's pretty similar stuff. What I would say is like looking at things as an opportunity to learn and not as a problem. It's easy to get frustrated when you're like, oh great, now this. But instead think of it as, okay, now this is a chance for me to actually learn what is wrong with my program. What is wrong with this? What can I learn from it? So it's hard to keep that attitude all the time, but I think having that mindset shift is really important. And that kind of leads to the saying yes to new things instead of saying no to new things just because you want to stay in your comfort zone.
I would like to chime in on that. So a lot of our expectations about like what an engineer should be are kind of rooted in code and technical management and programming. But at the end of the day, you're hired to solve problems and fix them. One good story that like we tell at our company is that like we had an issue. Well, this is actually a buddy story that he had at a startup. Is they had an issue where they had incredibly high server costs from their user bases, and they needed to essentially trim that down to remain efficient. So, like the lead engineer who was taking that, he decided to instead of like rebuilding their code base, refactoring, making things more efficient, he decided to analyze what their like who was their most costly users and why would they be that, and he was able to like create work streams with them to like make them use their product more efficiently, so that way both teams, when they get billed less, they save money. And this guy got like crazy props for it because essentially he solved what he did without an entire technical rehash of their entire company. So I would say like the key thing you should know is you're not an engineer, you're not like a programmer, you're there to solve problems, and you don't have to do that through code. You want to be able to make the most impact possible through as little work as possible. And that's kind of the key thing. And that's what makes a good engineer.
If possible, I actually do have like a bit of a third question. Can I go for it, Raymond?
Yeah, definitely. Go ahead.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. So like, I'm just
That
asking
is just like, no, please leave.
I've only asked this because like I've only been at one company in terms of internships, and I was pretty much working in IT role. So when it comes to problems, things that will come up for any type of employee working in a certain role, do you guys have like an internal wiki system or something like that that outlines how to go about specific problems or how to use certain different types of technologies or tools?
When you say problems, are you talking from like an IT perspective, from like a problem
No,
solving,
even just
like,
a coding perspective.
I think there's actually both. I don't know why we didn't make the distinction, but like, we have wikis in to some degree for like some like broader things, like first steps in solving a problem, like code styles or like general like architecture things. I think wikis also tend to be out of date a lot. They're hard to maintain, so I'm skeptical to like put a lot of faith in that. If you find like a wiki article for in your company that's like 3 years old, but there's definitely is some like system for that where you can find like common problems, solutions. You can find like architectures, kind of best practices for each team, stuff like that.
Hmm.
Yep, same thing here. We have a ton of documentation that's all up to date. You're pretty much expected to spend like a couple hours every week just writing documentation here about any changes you do. So there's a lot of documentation you can read through.
I
So
guess
it's,
if,
oh, sorry. Go ahead.
no, I was gonna say if nobody else had anything to say, thank you, but clearly, you do.
Yeah, I was gonna say, uh, there actually was no documentation, no wiki on my side of the team, so I started that. And so now I'm actually in the middle of it, um, making people, other members of the team document their code, setting up pipelines to generate documentation from doc strings within code, and then writing actual wiki articles that point to that and have more higher level information. So if what you want isn't there and you have the blessing of your manager or your team, do it yourself. Um, you can learn a lot in that process.
Yeah, just to kind of add on to what Peter said, it's just a funny side note. I had a one-on-one with my manager today, at my internship, and documentation is not something that we do, and it sucks actually. I actually do spend a lot of my day coding, so trying to figure out what previous engineers tried to accomplish, or why things are formatted in a certain way, or whatever the case may be, is super difficult. So yeah, I have also kind of started a documentation initiative. So sorry to the Swedes that don't like that, but it is very helpful. So yeah.
That's awesome.
Hey everyone. I just had one question for you guys. So I'm sure you've all faced your fair share of challenges in your career up to this point. So I just wanted to ask, what's one common difficulty you face in your current position, or one that you've faced kind of on your path to your career? And how did you overcome that? Or, if you're still continuing to challenge, you're still challenging with it. How do you overcome those difficulties?
One big challenge I had recently onboarding onto a new team, especially onboarding remotely because of COVID, um, was feeling connected to my team and really getting that time with the members of my team and my manager. Um, and I think this is something Roshni mentioned as well, that sometimes you don't get a lot of time with the other members of your team if they're busy working on projects, especially the more senior members. And it's important to know that you need to communicate that like Roshni said, they can't read your mind. And you can't get help if you don't ask for it, right? What's the saying? Something about a squeaky wheel gets oiled. Um, yeah, so uh, that's probably the biggest challenge I faced in the past year or so.
I could go. On a broad level, it was kind of twofold because you're learning how to do your job, but you're also learning how to like be in a job, right? There's a lot of stuff that goes with that. Just one thing, because otherwise I could be here all day about like what I've learned this year. But one thing is like being able to separate between work and home is something that like was actually necessary for me to work better. So I used to think like people were really stupid for saying live in the moment because it's like where else could you be? Now I understand like okay, you actually need to like A, have a hobby, or B, have a set schedule like I talked about before. You need to like do things in order to have that balance. So I think the difficulty for me just lied in like how should I go about like working? Especially remotely, there's not a lot of role models that you can rely on, like, oh, okay, Jim always gets out at 6 p.m. That's how he does it. So there's no sort of, it's a lot of kind of trial and error, but everyone gets through it. So I think that's something that has been difficult.
I have two that come to mind. The first one, it kind of builds off what Peter and Roshni have talked about, is like communication. Like I had really bad social anxiety during my first role, and I was bad at like asking for help. I was bad for communicating my progress. It just led to a lot more anxiety about like not if I'm not making progress on a problem I should be making progress on, or if I'm falling behind, or if like it just didn't feel good. So like getting better at communicating with everyone just makes it so much easier. And another problem that I'm kind of still facing is like communicating with like non-technical people about like technical problems. A lot of my roles, I've been like, you're kind of like, here's this design or feature we want you to build, kind of like go figure that out, how to build that, and kind of communicating like what is feasible, what's not feasible in the timeline they want, how long something's going to take, can be a real challenge, and kind of like trying to bridge that communication gap is really important.
For me, I think that when the biggest struggle, I joined Facebook this year, and joining any new company, whether it's out of college or in between your career, is always a difficult experience. The way I usually overcome it is I actually find someone that's as close as possible to the role that I'm going to be doing, and I'll just shadow them for a day. I'll just see how they do things. I'll see how they write their code, how they check it, how they do their documentation, like how often they even like check their email or a Teams chat, and just get a good feel about the way things are done at your company, because every company does things a little bit differently or even majorly differently. So checking in on the way that someone who has been successful does things, it gives you a good baseline to be say like imitation is the greatest form of flattery, and like just doing things exactly the way you do it, or you just say like that's not going to work for me, and you kind of just maybe I got to be on your own and figure out the way you're going to do things successfully. But yeah, definitely joining a new company and figuring things out is definitely probably a very big challenge.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you guys for your answers.
I think I want to add too super quick is like kind of related to what Nicholas was saying about sort of communicating to different stakeholders. I think it's really good to start practicing in college if you have any kind of social anxiety, or if I don't know, you're like me and you were just raised to be like very like respectful and whatnot, to kind of grow a backbone sometimes and be willing to push back. If your superior says something or some stakeholder that's absolutely ridiculous, find an appropriate way to like, no, stand your ground that this is not possible, and don't just, kind of say yes to everything without thinking it through. So it's a practice skill. Sometimes I've been in a meeting where I just say yes, and then after the meeting I'm like, crap, this was not correct. There's a better way I could have approached this. Then you have another meeting and you say, but wait, there was something. The point I'm trying to make is kind of learn to sort of communicate right now, especially with superiors. If you're a professor, like raise your hand in class if you don't necessarily, if you think you know the answer, but like just, that just practicing that communication with people that are older, wiser, that you respect is good.
So for our next question, I wanted to keep it with the personal side of working in tech. I think Roshni had mentioned this earlier, that you're going to be working on tech teams with so many smart people that know so many different technologies and systems. And what I automatically thought of was the imposter syndrome. So, that's a huge thing in the tech field. And I wanted to know if you guys have ever experienced it and what you did to overcome it.
All the time. I have, days every few weeks, every few months where I feel like, wow, I'm a moron and everyone around me is so smart. I think that's just, it comes with the territory. But it's also important to kind of realize like everyone has those days. I've seen people I like think are really, really smart make, like really dumb or simple mistakes in their code. It's because like they didn't know any better, or they weren't thinking straight that day. It happens. Like I think Roshni mentioned like a large part of our job is Googling. You know what I'm saying? Like no one knows everything. There's way too much things to know in technology to know everything. So like keeping that in mind, just like knowing you keep trying your best, I think is good enough.
Yeah, I still struggle with imposter syndrome, but I think it kind of ties into what everyone was saying earlier about communication. That if you're too in your own head, then it's easy um, to feel like you don't really know what you're doing. But if you know when to ask for help, and you do ask for help and you do communicate, then over time you'll build up that sense of reassurance that, okay, you're asking for help when it matters, and the stuff that you're not asking about, you really do know, and you're good at what you know.
That was a really good response.
I think libraries, technologies, frameworks kind of come and go like seasons. So being an expert on one today does not mean you're going to be an expert on the next one tomorrow. And you don't know what technology framework, how old it is going to be used, whatever job you're going to be working on, and what your architect decides, or if you're architecting it yourself. So sometimes like it's okay not to know, just because tech moves so quickly. You cannot just be a master of everything. So and once you master something, it might be gone tomorrow. So it's it's tough to keep up, but just understand that everyone's trying their best and everyone's holding each other accountable to how to like create the most technologically resilient applications possible. And that's why you're all work on a team.
Yeah, thank you very much for that advice. I'm gonna kick it over to another question on the personal side here. David, if you don't mind unmuting your mic and asking your question.
Yeah. So, I know that a really big thing with or in the tech field is burnout. And I know that a lot of people struggle with it. I've personally struggled with it a couple times in the past. So I wanted to just get your advice, or like, how do you guys deal with burnout if you've ever experienced it?
Time management.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I was going to interrupt you.
No, it's all right. Mine's going to be short. The few times, or actually the more than a couple of times that I've experienced burnout, I was very bad at managing my time. I would say that if you know that you're managing your time really well and you're still feeling burnt out, then maybe a change of environment is what's needed. But usually it's focusing on why do I feel burnt out? What am I actually spending my time on, and how can I better spend that time to achieve my goals?
Yeah, to build off Peter's that perfect answer. I think when you're hitting burnout, you're often either not managing your time really well or working on a project that like you're just not enjoying. So like I've like hit burnout and like been working on a project and just like I asked the manager if I could switch and like switching to a different project, it just felt so much better and so much more fresh and exciting. I was to say like I've been fortunate enough to work on companies that have very generous PTO programs. So like if I hit a wall, I can take a week or two off and it's not a big deal. And like that's also been really helpful.
I think the most important thing is to identify the cause of the burnout, right? Because the solution is going to be different. So these guys have already mentioned like a few causes. There was one point that I hit in my project where it was like, okay, wait, I'm kind of doing everything right, and I'm still feeling like really, really burnt out. So I talked with my manager, and it wasn't confrontational. It wasn't like I need a new project. It was more just so like, okay, this is a lot. You know, what can I do? And he helped me like restructure some of the work and gave it to a few other people. So if a big thing is if you've established the reputation and then you do that, it's good. If you just kind of ask it in the beginning, it might not, be what you want it to be. So that's like a little caveat. The other thing is like get a hobby for sure. Not just like watching TV is great, or reading or whatever, or hanging out with friends, good. But also like knit or do some jujitsu, like something that you can get better at, but that's using like a different part of your brain than like the coding part that is very tired. So that's my advice.
Yeah, no, definitely incredible answers, everyone. I have to agree with all of them. Like, yeah, definitely get a non-tech related like hobby outside of work, so that way you spend less time on screens. Like, your eyes will thank you, and your head's gonna thank you. So, like, I like the gym. I'm a big weightlifter. So,
Before you ask, gonna open it up to
Yeah, that's great advice. Thank you guys for that.
Okay, so yeah, we're gonna open it up to live questions. So I know that we already had some precursors with Tuda and Antonios, but we're also gonna open it up to live questions. So if you guys want to utilize, the raise hand feature, or you guys just want to jump in and ask some questions, please feel free to. We are approaching in the last 15 minutes here, so just any last questions that you had during the course of the meeting, or something that really sparked your interest about something that they said, the panelists said, please feel free to ask right now.
yeah, I have a question. What's one of like the most interesting projects you guys ever worked on?
I have an answer if I can go first. So I'm an Android developer. The kind of build system to build an Android app is called Gradle, and you can add plugins and features to Gradle to kind of add bespoke parts to your build process. And at a time at Vimeo, we maintained a networking library that was open source that other people could use, and we had a set of like data models that were kind of we were maintaining ourselves in 3 separate packages that so they could be optimized for different platforms like Android specific or like JVM specific. And as part of a project I was working on, we built in a Gradle plugin to like auto generate the various different versions of the data models, so we didn't have to maintain them ourselves. So instead of like writing code 3 times, we wrote it once, and then we ran a task in Gradle to write that other code for us. So that was something I was really proud of.
By the way, I know that we touched on this question earlier. So Lance, you were just about to speak, but I just want to say if you guys want to, just reiterate what you said earlier, or even if there's a new project that popped into your head, please feel free to talk about that as well.
Least technical, but coolest is I rewrote one of the components in the Oculus store for like actually in the VR headset, which is pretty cool. I rewrote it into they like it was using like an old version of React. I rewrote it using the new version. It was like a quick, easy like one day. But like if you ever use like the Oculus store, like I wrote some code for that. So
Hello again. I just have another question for you guys. So, just out of curiosity, what is it that gave you the passion to pursue your respective careers? What is it that um, kind of put that drive in you to become, what you've become today?
I don't know. For me, I just always liked tech. Like I remember like being really excited about the iPhone, always playing around with computers and kind of stuff like that. It's always tinkering. So like CS just made a lot of sense. And then I believe when I was there, I'm sure they still do now. The CS was taught in Java, and Java is like the one of the main languages for writing Android apps. So it's kind of like snowballed from there. And yeah, I've always enjoyed tech, so it's kind of it made a lot of sense, and it's been a lot of fun.
For me, it's that eureka feeling I get when I figure something out that's been bugging me for a while. And I think that is a big driver for a lot of people in any kind of tech-related field.
I feel like you got to have the curiosity. And it could be dangerous sometimes. Anyone who's done like CTFs knows that. But that sort of brain where it's like, I want to tinker with this, or I want to understand the way this works, or I want to learn this new thing because like everyone's talking about it, or it's the future, and I don't know anything about it. I have to. That's kind of like a good attitude to cultivate. Like I kind of mentioned before.
I always knew I wouldn't be happy for like in a normal pencil pushing office job. I knew I wanted something that like paid well. I knew, and I was like a very much a video game kid like growing up, and I had a very good understanding of myself. And that's what pushed me to pursue computer science. And the more I coded, the more I just like really enjoyed it and really liked it. And I think my push into like at least like get my career to where it's at today was just kind of the desire to see how far I could push it. I think like after my time here, I definitely want to head to a startup after, um, and just see if I could like have something take off. But like it's really about the mindset that you have. It's just you want to just be learning. It's fun. It's like I've been at a place in my life where like I wasn't learning and I was bored all the time, and you can kind of feel yourself like decay. It's not a good feeling, and like fresh keeps it interesting and fast and exciting.
That's great. Thank you. And I guess just a follow-up question on that, and I guess Lance kind of just gave an answer for that. But let's say, 10 years from now, where would you like to see yourself? How would you like to see your career develop into the future?
Can I say retired?
Lottery.
I think in 10 years, I don't know. I think as long as, like Lance was saying, I keep learning and I keep exploring new areas, and I think Roshni mentioned this before of having a broader knowledge as opposed to a deeper knowledge initially, right? Expanding out to the different areas of data science and ML. Like right now, I'm very heavy into NLP, but there's specializations within that and so many other specializations outside of that. Yeah, so I don't know if I see myself going down further down this path or finding another one. But just learning and figuring out which ones are the most interesting to me.
As related to that, like a big thing I know for anyone that feels this way, like I love tech, but I don't know exactly what, I want to spend all my time on. I feel like a big thing is, trying out different things. And even if it's just process of elimination, like, okay, I know that's not it for me. I mean, that's amazing. Like you just figured out something that you don't want to do. That's pretty spectacular. There's so many job roles that do that. So if you're even just feeling that way where it's like, oh, I don't quite know, being able to go through that journey and knock some things out is honestly pretty enjoyable, and you learn a lot of things are cross-functional. I'm sure you guys like have noticed in your classes, like some things are like eerily familiar to other things, so you'll kind of pick that up as well. I don't know if this is advice or necessarily just what I am doing, but for me a big thing is breadth and then depth, which is a kind of similar theme to what Peter was saying, but that's the approach I'm taking. I don't know if it's genuinely generally correct. Maybe the best thing is to maybe specialize from the beginning, but then I feel like you're kind of limiting yourself. So maybe just kind of consider what you're trying to do in that direction.
Actually, I have another question. So how would like someone that's like starting as a freshman in college like learn how to code when it like seems so overwhelming or intimidating, but like interesting at the same time?
I think the big thing is, especially this is something I still do for my job. Is like it seems like this big daunting task now, but make it smaller, incremental tasks that you can take baby steps towards. Maybe you're not going to build a whole app in a day, but like figure out, break down what you need to do to make that app, and kind of do that very incrementally. Just like go from there.
Thank you.
For me, it was learning a simpler language like Python and being able to understand the well, I mean it's breaking it down as well, but being able to understand like the software engineering concepts and translating that to a different language. Because once you know how to program in a language, usually it's just switch of syntax. But when learning to code in Python, breaking things down into smaller pieces um, is really the right way to do it.
I have another question. Would you guys like recommend boot camps?
I wouldn't. I'm gonna be flat no. Like you guys are here with your degree. Like you're gonna be much better off. Boot camps don't really have the greatest track record. Boot camps are kind of shady from this like finding which one to apply to. I think you guys with your if you guys can graduate with a bachelor's, I would absolutely rather you guys do that than go and I wouldn't go to a boot camp after either.
Yeah, to add to Land's point, yeah, if you have a CS degree, I don't think there's any reason to do a boot camp. I've worked with boot camp grads, so like I know guys who've like gotten degrees in like finance or something else, and like went to a boot camp and now are doing mobile development. So like it works. Do I think it's like the first option? Probably not. Do I, especially now that you're going to graduate with a CS degree. I think you're already up a leg on boot camp grads already. Like there's no need to go through that process as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You're already paying for a degree. Might pay for a boot camp too. And the I think the only things that you could really gain out of a boot camp are having those more senior um, practitioners that you can ask questions to. But if you're working on a personal project now, you can ask your professors. So you can work on it with your colleagues. You can do something collaborative. You don't have to go to a boot camp to learn how to code.
Okay, with that, I know we're approaching on our last 4 minutes here. We're scheduled till 6:30. So I'll ask the infamous last question of an alumni panel. What is your greatest piece of advice or the last piece of advice that you want to give everybody in this room right now? Picture yourself sitting there as a college student still. What would that advice be that you give to your former self?
I think we've hit on a lot of it already, but I think the two things I would really suggest is getting really good at communicating. I think people have like this illusion of like as a programmer like, you're gonna sit by yourself all the time and just like hammer out code all the time. And yeah, that's a big part of it. But, like you're gonna have to, there's gonna be meetings. You have to talk to people. You're gonna have to work with like stakeholders. You're gonna have to work with product managers and all that stuff. So that's really important. And it's like showing initiative. Like a really good job at like at Meta, at Zillow, at all these nice companies isn't going to fall on your lap. Like you need to study for your interviews. You need to apply aggressively to jobs and like and follow up with recruiters and hiring and just making sure like they see that you want it.
I think the two things I'd tell myself back freshman year is one is the anxiety you have and how overwhelming it is normal. You'll get through it. You'll learn enough. You don't need to know everything. And then also, interview maxing is very valuable, and you should definitely maximize your interview skills while you're at college.
I'd say definitely internships are really important. Maybe try to get to know more people instead of cold applying. I got my job because of an internship at another company. I applied to Deloitte in my freshman year, didn't hear anything from them, but because they had my details from 3 years ago, plus I interned at another company, that's how they got to me. So it was like, unfortunately, a lot of the times it is who you know. So try to always cultivate that. On a technical level, keep up with the latest stuff, especially if you're in cyber. It's really critical. Trends change like this. So that's really important. And then on a personal level, definitely just like know thyself. It'll make things easier for you in your first year, especially if you're moving to like a new city for your first job. Lot of like, the more you know about yourself in college right now, the better you'll be.
Yeah, I'd like to build off of a lot of the great answers here, and I would say the main one for me is time management, knowing how to manage your time efficiently. And I have an example for that, and another one is knowing that not all advice uh, is applicable to you, and that's know thyself, right? You can try it out, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Lance, you mentioned earlier that you do leak code every day, and I tried that for a while, and it just didn't work for me. And that was part of the time management was I would work on a problem for like 3 hours because I went to the hardest one, and I just wanted to see if I could do it. But something that did work for me was setting aside those 3 hours, maybe a few times a week, or even at minimum once a week, and going through and timing myself 15 minutes per leak code question, just whiteboarding it out. How would I solve this? And then not even coding it, just looking at the comments, the responses. Was I even on the right track? And then another 15 minutes trying to make my solution more efficient, even if it was already efficient. How can I make it more efficient? And doing that really helped me with my time management and critical thinking of problem solving, and then I could work on the code after.
All right, so with that, I just want to say thank you so much for everybody taking the time out of their busy schedules to be able to come into this alumni panel and give all the insight and advice that you have given so far. Before we officially disband, I just want to make sure that everybody, Roshni, Peter, Nicholas, and Lance, is your preferred platform LinkedIn? Because I know that's what we've been using on the Google Forms to pull information about where you guys are at right now. All right, perfect. So we'll make sure to supply everybody's LinkedIn, especially in the Discord and on the YouTube recording, because this will go up on YouTube. So once again, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. And we hope you have a good rest of your day and good weekend ahead.
Reach out if you guys need anything. Leave a note so it's not just some random person trying to connect with me on LinkedIn.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Please reach out.
Thank
Yeah,
you so
thanks
much
for
for the
having us.
advice.
Thank you.
And thanks, Raymond, for setting this up. Like, this stuff was really important when I was in ACM, so thanks for keeping it going.
Thank
Oh,
you.
yeah, no, I'm definitely happy to carry on the tradition. You know, we've held alumni panels past 2 semesters. We wanted to keep it going for sure.
Awesome. Alrighty. Bye, guys. Have a great night.
Take care.